Okay, so get this right. President Biden's approval rating, it's kind of hovering around like 37.1%,
Mm.
right? And here's the thing that's wild. It's actually lower than Trump's was after January 6th, like right after the Capitol riot.
Wow.
When he left office, his approval was at 38.4%.
Huh. That's pretty counterintuitive when you think about it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
after everything that happened, you'd think that,
Yeah,
the sitting president would be doing at least a bit better than that.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So that's basically the puzzle we're diving into today. How can the current administration have worse approval than the previous one, even after January 6th?
Mm.
I mean, it feels like a real head scratcher, right?
Totally.
And to like dig into this, we've got a transcript from a YouTube video on the Ring of Fire channel.
Okay.
And it's basically a commentator trying to figure out this exact same thing.
I see. I mean, that's a good place to start, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's experiencing this disconnect firsthand, trying to make sense of it.
Exactly. So for you listening in, our mission is basically to explore the explanations this commentator brings up.
Right.
We want to see if we can understand what's creating this kind of illogical situation.
Oh.
And we'll try to do it without getting too bogged down in like partisan stuff. We're sticking to what our source is telling us.
Makes sense. So what's the commentator's initial reaction to these approval numbers?
I mean, they're just blown away.
Yeah.
They actually call it insane, which you can kind of get, right? It doesn't seem to track with how politics usually works. Their first instinct isn't to like defend or attack anyone.
Yeah.
They're just pointing out how bizarre this whole thing is.
Right. Right.
Then they say something interesting. They don't see Biden as this super progressive president that some people on the left make him out to be.
Interesting.
But they do acknowledge he's done some things like the infrastructure bill and this student loan debt relief.
So they're recognizing some achievements, but maybe
Right.
they're also suggesting those achievements haven't been like transformative enough to really rally widespread passionate support.
Yeah. You got it. It's like they're saying, even if you think Biden's doing an okay job, maybe even a pretty good job, this low approval rating compared to Trump after January 6th, it's still a big red flag.
Yeah, it definitely raises questions. And what does the commentator say about that?
So they get a little frustrated with like normal polls.
Hmm.
You know how polls tell you what people think, but not really why?
Yeah, that's always the issue, right?
Exactly. They basically say, I need answers as to why Trump was more popular after the Capitol riot than Joe Biden is today.
Hmm.
And they're not buying easy answers like, oh, Biden's not mentally sharp enough. They even compare it to still loving a grandparent with dementia to show that disapproval isn't always like a simple, rational thing.
That's a powerful analogy. I mean, it really gets at the point that there are these deeper, sometimes emotional reasons behind how people feel about political figures.
Totally. And that's where they start talking about the media, especially conservative media.
Okay, this is where it gets interesting, I think.
Yeah. So they think that all the negative stuff coming from conservative outlets, which they say have way more reach than liberal media, that's been a huge factor in shaping how people see Biden. They're saying this constant barrage of negativity making him look incompetent, corrupt, even like self-contradictory. It's really stuck with a lot of people.
It's interesting because if you think about it, they're highlighting the power of narrative in politics, right?
Right.
Like if you keep hearing a certain story over and over again, even if it's not totally accurate, it can start to feel true. And it can overshadow other things like a president's actual accomplishments or even a previous president's really bad actions.
Yeah. And then they go even further. They say this constant smearing, as they call it, might have like permanently hurt Biden's image.
It's a bold statement for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They're basically putting it out there as a theory based on what they're seeing with the media and how people are reacting. They admit they don't have hard proof, but they see this as a pretty solid explanation for why Biden's approval is so low, especially compared to Trump after January 6th.
Right. They're saying they haven't found anything else that makes as much sense.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
just to recap, we started with that crazy statistic, Biden's approval rating being worse than Trump's right after the Capitol riot.
Yeah. A pretty wild starting point.
And this commentator on the Ring of Fire, they just couldn't wrap their head around it. They saw it as completely illogical.
And they offered a few possible reasons for this. First, they questioned whether Biden is really seen as a strong progressive leader. He's done some things, but maybe not enough to really get people excited.
Right. Then they talked about how regular polls don't dig deep enough. They don't tell us why people feel the way they do, and they really wanted to understand that why.
And then, of course, there was the whole media angle. They think the negative coverage, especially from conservative outlets, has seriously warped how people view Biden, maybe even done some lasting damage to his reputation.
Exactly. And in the end, they kept coming back to their view of Biden as just a kind of average president. They just couldn't figure out why his approval would be so low compared to Trump after January 6th. It's a real puzzle.
It definitely is. And it makes you think about how much media and our own preconceived notions really influence how we see our leaders, especially in situations that seem to defy logic, like this one. So I guess the question for you listening is this. What role do you think media and our own beliefs play in shaping presidential approval ratings, especially in cases like this where things just don't seem to add up?
It's a lot to consider.
It really is. It makes you realize how complex and maybe even how unpredictable the relationship between politics, public perception, and the media really is.
For sure. It's a lot to unpack.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.